Okay. Since it is 102, I think we're just going to jump into it. Again, if you're showing up late, please feel free. You can jump in later with your questions. I wanted to start out with something that we got a few questions about and just do a quick demonstration of that. So if you give me just a moment to pull up my screen. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great, great. So this is a new section on the website. Now, this is currently restricted to members because these are the only people it really should be relevant to. But if you're having trouble figuring out how to add a company under your own company or to add an endpoint, I'm actually switch these around because endpoints has been the one we keep getting questions about. You can find that here. So again, it's under resources at the very top called site tutorials, and it's got a quick video tutorial on how to add an endpoint. I will also just quickly show you here instead of making you do homework. So if you want to add an endpoint, you'll go into your own company information. I'm just going to go into somebody else's here. I think I'm going to go to maybe Hit Promo or just whoever I can pull up the fastest here. There you go, view company. And I see some more information than you'll be able to see. But if you are an admin on your company account, you will be able to see your users. So you can add new users within the limits of your PromoStandards account that will be able to log into this and edit it as well, depending on the privileges you give them. And you'll be able to set a visible contact if you want people to be able to reach out to you who are accessing our website. And last but not least, most importantly, right there, you have the add endpoints function. Hey, Sharon, we do have a bit of an echo, so if you want to mute, please be aware of that. Yeah, right here you'll be able to add an endpoint. So it's not the same as adding a company. Adding a company goes to the back end of WordPress, but adding an endpoint and adding contacts or adding users is entirely on the front end right here. So again, you would click into your company's name, which you can also find by doing promostandards.org/companies/your company's name, and then just clicking add endpoint right there. And again, you can do the same for users. So if anybody has questions about navigating the website, please feel free to speak up now or shoot me an email if there's anything that comes up. Do we have anybody on that? All right, I will stop sharing that. And we can move on to some of the other questions that you guys submitted. One of them that I got was regarding e-commerce, and I'm hoping that our volunteers will be able to jump in and help me out a little bit here. It was asking about what the best options are for e-commerce platforms that are going to be more flexible than something like Sage or ASI that's kind of this all-encompassing, one-size solution, specifically when it comes to Google Ads and social media integration. I don't entirely think that applies to PromoStandards, but I do know we have some Shopify-compatible applications, so I was hoping there might be some insights on that. Any of our volunteers know anything about social media integration with PromoStandards, like selling through things like Instagram or TikTok Shop, things like that? Because I believe that is the question.
Yeah,
Doesn't appear that we have anybody that's super familiar with that. What I would say is if you're a member and you're interested in something like that, I would go onto Shopify or whichever platform it is you're using if they have their own extension store, basically, and I would look for things that use PromoStandards. If you search PromoStandards, you will find a few. And on our website, if you go to the service provider directory, you can search for, just hit Control F on the service provider page, anybody that offers an application that will be compatible. It would say PromoStandards compatible application or Shopify integration. And all of those services will allow you to integrate PromoStandards on your front-end selling side of your e-commerce store. I'm not super technical, so I don't know the ins and outs of how that works, but I do know that that option is available, and you'd probably be best served talking to those service providers directly. So I'm not sure who submitted that question. I hope that helps. Okay. We did have one. They wanted to know what the best way to link supplier APIs into a new website for product data, images, and live inventory. I believe the answer to that would just be to use the standards relative to those, we do have a media standard, a product data standard, and we should have, I believe, product data includes current like live inventory, depending on how you set that up. If any of our volunteers want to verify that I have the details on that right.
Yes, that's correct. So live inventory, we do have an inventory feed, so you can pull inventory. Product data has your pricing or your base pricing, and then PPC will have your finalized pricing depending on your configured product. So you'd have to use multiple endpoints in order to pull exact inventory values and pricing, but that's basically how you do that.
Same for images. Again, I believe that would just be under media, which is another endpoint service we do have. So.
Yep, and I'll say too, at Tech Summit, mentioned there is a public Confluence site for best practices. On that site is guidance on how long to cache some of this data, so you're not constantly calling it. Like images, inventory, product data all have different recommended TTL values on how often you should refresh those versus cache those locally.
Great. I don't know who submitted that question. Do you have anything else on that, or do we cover it for you? They may not even be here. It looks like we're missing a good amount of people, so hopefully that answers that question for them if they watch this back. I believe one of the questions in here we got was directly for a service provider, which I think that I can kind of cover generally. They had some questions about consistency, and this is something we actually had come up when we were at PPAI. People kind of came up and talked to us about. The reason that something like data may, or, your consistency with your suppliers in how you're retrieving data may vary is because of how they have integrated it. PromoStandards does not, we don't have people we can kind of send out, we're a volunteer organization, to verify that people are implementing things correctly. We are working on a sort of verification program right now and kind of sorting out what that will look like, so you can, from the outside, look at a supplier or look at whichever company, a service provider, distributor, and go, okay, how well are they doing this? How well is this integrated? Or how much tinkering will I have to do in order to work with this person? And of course, that would make them aware that, hey, we need to fix something on our end as well. The biggest hurdle for that has just been trying to make it impartial. We can't just bring on one of the service providers that are volunteers with us and say, hey, we need you to go through and make sure all of this is up to spec, because obviously that would be incentivizing them to say, well, it's not up to spec and you should work with us, and that would be an obvious conflict of interest. So that's something we've kind of had to carefully navigate. Again, we are working on solutions for that. I don't have a timeline on when we're looking at that, but we did discuss it quite a bit at PPAI and at Tech Summit. So please do keep an eye out for that. But the long and the short of it is, if data is inconsistent from supplier to supplier, it's because the supplier messed up, and you're just going to have to tell them that. There's nothing that we can do to enforce that on our end. That would go against these being open standards, open source, to be customized for your specific use case. So, let's see.
Yeah. Hey, Alex, can I add something to that?
Sure, absolutely.
So this is Marco. Hi, everybody. Just want to, I think everything Alex said was correct, and I agree. With service providers, a lot of times what you can do is have them either audit your data and make sure that they're following best practices. It's really important to understand best practices and understanding what your distributor clients are looking for in their data. So a lot of them will have documentations of fields that they want. So it may be optional, but for them, it's required. And so I would go back, if you are using a service provider, go back to that service provider, ask them to maybe do an audit, or to just make sure that they're following best practices. And if they have any kind of documentation from the distributor that gives them guidance on some of those fields that they deem are necessary or important to them, you definitely want to follow that as closely as possible.
Extending on to that, this is a little over my head, so I'll throw it out there. If our volunteers think there's something they can add on, please let me know. We had a follow-up under that question about how others might be handling product information management, EDI, and workflow consistency. That's jargon that's a little bit above me. Just if you had any real-world use cases, managing different product info. But I don't necessarily know if we can get into that.
I can just a little quick touch, but basically, I think it's all going to come down to transformation rules. That's what we're doing at ePromos. We're spending a lot of time transforming data that other suppliers have and putting it into a nomenclature that is ePromos lingo, if you would, and make sure that we've got a way to kind of map all of that together. So it's a lot of work to do that. So that's really the only place is basically start with your suppliers that are, for us, we call them elite and super elite suppliers, and then work your way down from there for the rest of the PromoStandards and integrated suppliers. So that's kind of how we do it.
Is the person who asked that question here? If not, I think we will move on. So one of them that I was looking forward to kind of bringing up, because this is something that goes, again, over my head. This is regarding the different versions of PromoStandards. We still have support for our 1.0 versions, as well as, maybe a 1.2 incremental and some standards. And we have, of course, the 2.0s now. So we did get a question about whether or not there were specific use cases for using 1.0 over 2.0. And what those might look like.
Yeah, so I read this earlier, and I was thinking, the versions are just marked iterations over time from our community feedback and different use cases, that come up after version 1's published. We published version 2. So I think the use cases, I think you would typically go with a 2.0. A lot of the use cases are still there, just different formats of data, maybe new fields that have been added. So if you're looking to start on a new service and there's a version 1, version 2, maybe it's product data, for example, I think you would just go with the version 2. Unless, of course, you're trying to integrate the supplier that doesn't offer the version 2. But I think with inventory and product, I think those are widely adopted by most of the suppliers.
Absolutely. I agree. Anybody else have anything they want to add on? Great. And we did get a question here about timeline on future services, future standards. With something like that, again, the entire staff that's working on these is volunteer, and we have a lot of, kind of hands involved in making this, and we want to make sure the solution works best for everyone. So that does come down to our standards committee. I'm not sure, Dustin, are you the rep for them here today? I mean, I didn't hear anything super finite with dates. You maybe have an estimate, or is it just kind of when it's ready?
Yeah, I don't have dates or an estimate. I can tell you that, we learned from the Tech Summit that product data 3.0 is going to come before PPC. And, we've been working on product data. I think it's very close to being a mature state. We mentioned that we want to make sure that what we release isn't going to, have a revision short down the road. So we really want to get all of the details and the edge cases worked out. And then, we can publish that internally, test that out in the standards committee, and then we'll eventually open that up to members. So I'd say as far as timeline, a vague timeline, product data will probably be the next. The event subscription / webhooks is already out in the alpha testing. We have some testers for that. So I think that's coming first before product data. But as far as new standards, I said product data 3 would be next, and then we're much further along in that we are at the PPC rewrite.
Great, thank you, Dustin. Okay, monitoring and error handling. Oh, this is an interesting one. So as far as monitoring PromoStandards endpoints, we do have an endpoint listing, so you can have your endpoints listed on the PromoStandards website if you are a member. But that is really the only way to see them. We don't have kind of live tracking of those endpoints on our website. It's just to have them listed, so you know that that service is available from that company or through that company. Regarding error tracking, is there an error log specific to PromoStandards? I don't believe there is. I think it would just be an error log on their own website that would have, PromoStandards specific error message. They wanted if there was a tool for tracking or understanding error messages, basically.
I will say with the new validator that was announced at the Tech Summit, I did notice firsthand when I was testing something that there is a useful feature at the very bottom, and it's to use AI to help you understand what this error message means. So for my case, I had a field that was in the wrong order. Like I just need to move it up, and it gave a SOAP error. The click button and it says, "Hey AI, tell me what's going on with this." And then it's like, you just need to move this field above this field. So I think that's something that I found helpful recently that I want to share. I think it touches on this topic.
Great. We had a question about best practices for preparing product data. I would refer you, if you are the one who submitted that question, to our best practices page, but keep in mind that is for members only. Lowest tier membership is not that expensive. It's $500 joining as an adopting member, and that would give you access to, again, those best practices, the Confluence page. You said some of that is public. I believe most of that is members only, though, if not all at this point. So that's what I would do if you're looking to figure out what the best practices are, or again, if you know somebody else who's integrated with PromoStandards, you're free to talk to them about how they did it, and that would probably be very, very beneficial to you as well. Overview of basic uses and real-world usage of PromoStandards. This is something that I've been looking at doing on my end, is making short videos talking about what all of the services do. But we actually do have on our YouTube channel, again, it should be youtube.com/PromoStandards, one word, or you can search for it. We did previously some longer videos talking about each of the services and what they're used for, some of their real-world use cases. A lot of those were Zoom calls like this that were recorded, but if you're just looking to get an overview on what the real-world use case of a service looks like or of a standard looks like, that's where I would look. And again, we'll work on putting together some sort of educational material in the future, so it's a little bit more succinct than maybe sitting through a 30-minute call. But if you're really wanting to get into some of the more technical aspects, definitely I would use that as a resource. Okay. We did have a question about how companies can participate. The best way to do that would be to join as an advisory member. That's when you get to start putting volunteers on our boards or on our committees. So right now we have the standards committee, we have best practices, we do have the marketing committee that I'm representing at this meeting, and we also should have in the future some for a work group for decorators as well. So if you're wanting to get involved, then please join as a advisory member, and that's how you can become a volunteer. Do we have anything to add from our current volunteers about what it was like for you guys to become members of the board that you wanted to, or not the board, your committees you wanted to add on?
Hey, Alex, it's Mike. I'll just say, you can be on work groups as an adopting member as well if advisory is too big a jump for people to make. But adopting members can also participate in work groups, which are often used early on in standards writing or in best practices as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike. Okay. And I'm just looking through to see if there's anything that I believe that we can cover that we have not covered yet. Let's see. Biggest country outside of the USA using PromoStandards. I have no idea, and I don't know how we would track that. I would assume that'd be Canada. Okay. I believe we're through the majority of the questions. If you're one of the volunteers and you see another question that you think we might want to bring up or address, but most of it looks like it's just listening in, or a question about using Claude. So if we have anything else out of there you guys want to cover, but if not, I'm going to open the floor to anybody that has additional questions. Please jump in, and we'd be happy to try to get that answered for you. Don't be shy. Wow, we must have done an amazing job at answering all of this. Great. Great work, guys. What's this one here about printers? Printer RP software manufacturers. Any ideas on that one? It's under 8. It's right over my head. No? Okay. We did have an AI question in there, so if anybody's just bored and you want to talk about how you're using Claude in your work, I mean, I don't think we're using, or I don't know to what extent we've been using AI in working on the standards, if that's the question being asked. Dustin might know a little bit more about that than I would, but don't.
Sorry, say that again.
We had a question about using AI in the development workflows. I think they just mostly want to know if or how we're using AI at all working on the standards. I mean, there was some discussion of it, but I think we used AI a little bit. We were working on like ideas for a validator, but I don't know what all we did.
Yeah, it's probably nothing worth mentioning. No groundbreaking.
Nothing groundbreaking with AI just yet on the PromoStandards front. Very good. Well, if we don't have any more questions, again, I think we covered the big ones in here, the ones that I felt like we were equipped to answer. If you're currently attending, again, please shoot me an email or quickly drop a message in the chat to say, wait, don't close the meeting, I have a question. But if we're all good to go, then I think we will conclude this office hours. I'll be hanging around for a little bit in case you think of anything. Thank you to our volunteers for joining us today, Patrick and Dustin, and answering some of those hard-hitting questions that I'm not equipped to do, as well as Mike. Thank you for jumping in earlier, and Marco. Thank you so much.
I have a question, Alex.
Mm.
So I am newer on the supplier side. So I have awareness of promo standards, but have never had to kind of be in the weeds with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a ton of data, but I am trying to kind of wrap my brain around some of like what the basic standards are so I can better define, is it best for me to essentially just work with another company to help us move towards compliance, or if there's things that my internal teams needs to like start looking at with our data. So, and like on the membership side, it says like there's basic access to standards, but is that something where like with membership you find out all those different steps, or like I'm trying to figure out timeline or how I can delegate to certain members of the team to try to help us move forward with compliance.
Right. With a non-member account, you can use the standards, and especially if you're somebody who's working through a service provider, or you're, for example, a supplier that's working under a distributor, and they've said, hey, you need to get on promo standards, and they can kind of direct you on how to set that up. We don't want to necessarily charge people for that kind of thing, so we've made it, again, it's completely accessible. You can get all of the standards, the WSDLs from those, which would allow you to integrate them. But obviously, it doesn't include any instructions, any tutorial. That kind of stuff is all under our best practices page that tells you how to do it, what is the best way to go about it. It's kind of the closest thing we have to a tutorial. And again, that is restricted under the first tier of membership, that $500 adopting.
Right.
Again, if you're working...
I couldn't even find like a basic though, because I was like, I've heard image stuff as part of it. So I was like, I would have, my art department kind of work on images and then kind of divide and conquer among our teams, but I couldn't find anything that was an active link. Everything I found was broken or restricted access. So
Yeah, there used to be some
Yeah.
loopholes to get into some of those things on the previous website, and that was something we looked at
Okay.
closing. We moved over to the new one. So if you're seeing things that people previously said worked and now are shut down, it's probably from the old site.
Got it.
Again, that we kind of have been patching those holes. Yeah, you're
Okay.
absolutely right. I mean, a lot of that, or I say a lot of that, all of that is going to be restricted behind a membership. If you're working through, you said you're a supplier, right? So if you're working
Yes.
with a distributor that's using promo standards already,
Hmm.
I would maybe ask them for guidance if you're just not looking to spend any money on it yet. If you are working
Well, it's
through a service
definitely something we're
provider,
going to have to spend money on, but it's more of like
yeah,
trying to grasp the scope of what we're going to need to do to make sure like our internal teams are doing their due diligence as well.
I would say the best way to maybe get an idea of the scope, and again, this is coming from somebody who's not as technical, would be to go to a service provider that's familiar with promo standards and just do a consultation. There's a good chance that
Right.
your internal team would be able to do it, but you'd have to get somebody with know-how to get in and look around and say, this is what you have, this is what you would need, and then go to your
Gotcha.
team and say, is that something we're capable of doing?
Okay.
Again, that's with PromoStandards being volunteers, and with a lot of those volunteers representing companies, it's not something where we can send somebody in to go into the, into
Oh,
your
yeah, of
back
course.
end and look around and go, we think you need this, and that's us. You're going to have to take what people say with a grain of salt there.
Right.
But I would say, yeah, the best way to figure out what you need, it would be to do a consultation. If you
Perfect.
want to try, or you're very confident in your developers and you want to just go in with a first, entry level membership and look at the best practices and go, okay, this is how it's supposed to work. Let's just go for it. That is an option available to you, but that
Okay.
is definitely the riskier option if they're totally in the dark right now, not sure what to do, in my opinion.
Perfect. That sums it up. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate
Okay.
that.
I would also suggest starting small. Pick one endpoint and work with a distributor on that one. Pick something like order status. That'll get your feet wet, kind of get the framework built around what you need. And then you can kind of judge by the other endpoints and what the distributor's asking for and kind of build off of that one. So that's kind of how we started. We always suggested start small with like inventory or order status or order ship notifications. Those are very light, very small pieces. And if you start there and kind of work on it and you can start building that framework out in your own company, then you can expand from there, if that makes sense.
Perfect. It does that. It helps a lot. Because my thing is I've just, different people have all had something to say and four different people don't seem to be unilaterally aligned with what we're supposed to be accomplishing. So I figured go to the source and get a better idea of what needs to happen so we can go from there. So thank you.
I had one more, just came in over text, but I don't see the specific question.
Hey Alex, I actually have a question. It's completely new. We just got our membership. I'm going through the documentation. Thank you for pointing out the best practices. So Alpha Beacon is actually like a provider in the sense of we're not a distributor, we're not a supplier, and we work by providing offshore talent for both. And we're developing like a really simplistic app where we're providing like really, really baseline services for people who are trying to just track orders, create basic quotes. We thought that doing promo standards would be super helpful for us to connect at least, start with the top suppliers. In the best practices section, it's really specific to distributor or supplier. Is there one that I should look at from my perspective or our perspective?
Hmm. That's a good question, Patrick. Do you have anything on that? I mean, again, from what
No, we
I'm
don't
learning,
have anything specific to service providers or any of that. So it is geared more towards distributor supplier. It's where 90% of the work is being done.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably, if I was looking at the documentation for best practices, we have a lot more on the supplier side about how the standards are supposed to be used. And I think as someone building a software could glean more from using the supplier side, just to say, this is how we're going to push the data out. This is how we're going to lay it out. And so if you're building this website and you're trying to consume this data, it'll make more sense going through those best practice documents on the supplier side. So we have a document per endpoint. So if you're starting with like media 1.1, you can go through and we have general discussion first about how this is going to be presented. And then we have the actual standard, and then we have an extra column for best practices. Make sure you do this in the description and add this. So there's a lot more content on the supplier side than the distributor side. The distributor side's more of, this is how, basic integration strategies. But the meat of what we've been working on is on the supplier home side.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
And you were with Office Beacon, right?
Yes.
Okay. When you have that application figured out, and I don't know what the timeline looks like for that, make sure you reach out to us because, again, if you are providing a service, we do have a page for that on the service provider directory. So once you've got all your ducks in a row there, we can list you on the service provider directory as providing a PromoStandards compatible application. So
Awesome.
please let us know.
Will do.
Okay. Anybody else? I don't have any other messages, so I believe we're good.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Alrighty, I think I'm going to conclude the meeting here. Thank you so much, everybody, and thanks, Patrick, for sticking around to help me out there. Appreciate it.
You bet.